What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the next part in the BrightSky weather app. In this video, we're going to build out these collection view cells. We've got 3 of them. We've piped our data into viewModels, and we're going to configure all these. And hopefully by the end of this video, we'll have a beautiful looking weather app with current daily and hourly weather showing up. So without further ado, smash that like button and let's jump right in. So we're going to start first and foremost with our current weather collection view cell. And essentially what we want to show in the cell up here is the current temperature in degrees, the condition, and a icon. So we'll probably kind of rearrange this as we go, but let's at least create these views. So we're going to say private let, and the first thing we want is temp label, and I'm going to try to get through these as quickly as possible for the sake of making some healthy progress here. So bear with my copy and pasting after we type some of these out so we can save on some time. But we are going to say text alignment will be center, and we are going to bump up the font size here, and maybe we'll do some medium font, and let's see what like 52 or 42 font size looks like. Should be pretty big since it is the current weather. And we are going to say condition label is also going to be similar. We'll make this a tad bit smaller, and we'll also say this is regular. And finally, we're going to want a icon, which is going to be a UI image view. And this will represent, of course, the current weather conditions. And these are actually SF symbols that we get from Apple. They actually will provide the symbol name in the response of the WeatherKit API call, so it's pretty helpful. Let's also come here and say that the content mode, let's see if I can find it. There we are. Content mode is going to be to maintain the aspect ratio and fit into the bounds of the view. Next up, what we want to do is add all of these as subviews. So we're going to say add subview. And come on, autocomplete, there you go. And we're gonna try to go in the order that we are trying to achieve here. So let's do it. So first we're going to do the icon up top. Then down below, we're gonna have the, or I guess instead of the icon up top, what we probably want is the temperature label up top. And then right below it, we can probably have the icon, and right next to it, we can have let's see why this is yelling at me. This should be content view, not mode. Right below the icon, we can have the condition label. All right, let's build, make sure it's building appropriately. All right, we're gonna want to lay all these out. So we're gonna say add constraints here. Alrighty, and we're gonna define this function right down below. We'll also have a prepare for reuse override. So in case this cell is reused, what we want to do is we're just going to nil out a couple of things. So we'll say this is nil, and also we will reset the icon image views image property. And in the constraints, we're going to say that we're going to activate a collection of constraints. First and foremost, what we'll want to do is for the temperature label, we'll say its top anchor is a constraint equal to the top anchor. We're going to do the left anchor, the right anchor. We'll do left here, right here. And below this, what we'll actually want is the icon on the left, and then right next to it, the condition name, and the top of that will be to the bottom of the temperature label. So I know it's a little confusing when I try to verbalize it, but let me actually type it out here. I think it'll make a whole lot more sense. So we'll say the left here will be a constraint that is equal to the content view's left anchor. Alrighty, the top of the icon view is going to be equal to the bottom of the temperature label, which presumably is above it. Alrighty. And then the bottom of the icon view is going to be equal to the content view's bottom. And perhaps we'll add a constant of like 20 maybe to give it a little bit of room to breathe. And let's work on the condition label, which will be right on the right, no pun intended, of the icon. So here, once more, we'll say that the left anchor is a constraint equal to icon's right. All right, maybe we'll add some constant. Maybe we'll do some 10-point buffering. And let's see what more we want. We want the top anchor is going to be equal to the temperature labels bottom anchor. And we might have some anchoring issues here. And if we do, we'll adjust them together accordingly. Here, we're going to want the content views right, to the right of the condition will be to the right of that, and the bottom here will actually be roughly the same, so we can get away with copy and pasting it. So let's hit Command B, make sure it's all building. And now finally, before we can run and see something show up, we want to actually expose some stuff off of our view model. So here we're going to say public var condition, which will be a string. We're going to expose model.condition, which should be a string. We're going to say public var temperature, which will be a string as well. We're going to return model.temperature, which looks to be let's see what the type of this is. It is definitely not a string. So let me jump into here and see what's going on. So condition is also not a string. So this is a weather condition. So let's see what's going on in here. So we're going to say condition.description perhaps. So that actually handled that. And we'll say a description of the temperature as well. Let's actually see what we end up getting, and then we'll adjust accordingly. I will say icon name here, which is also a string. We're going to return model dot, and what I want is the symbol name. So we are going to look for symbol name. Beautiful. Back in here, we can say that the icon.image is going to be UI image. System name, then we can say view model, and again, this is what we literally just exposed. So we can now use it. So the condition will be this dot condition, and the temp label will be this dot view model dot temperature. All right, so we did a whole lot there. Let's see what on earth shows up. Okay, so we see that this does indeed show up in Celsius. I see the top of this cloud, but it looks like it's kind of cut off. So this leads me to believe something in our constraints is a little wonky, since it's kind of being overflowed from our content view. So let's see what's going on. So we're saying top anchor is equal to the content view's top anchor. Let me set some background colors. Maybe we'll make this black. And let's see where things are being laid out. So it looks like our temperature label is taking up the vast majority of the height that is available. So what I believe I can go ahead and do is the following. Let me set a constant to the height anchor to ensure that there is at least 80 points of breathing room for the condition label. Alrighty, so it looks like it did indeed push it up. It does look like there's still a little bit of an issue here, so let's see what we can do. So let's take a look at our alignments here. So our condition label, we want the text alignment of this to be left. So let's build and run this one more time. Alrighty, so it looks like the hugging priority is the actual issue here for our icon itself. So instead of the icon having a left anchor equivalent to the left, I think what would be more appropriate would be if this had a constant height anchor, and we gave this maybe like 55. And if we also gave this a width anchor, a top, and the bottom is fine as well. I think the more important part is that this should be touching the right of the condition. So it looks like it is. It looks like it moved over, which is good. So let's see what else we need to adjust here. So the bottom anchor needs to be -20 for both of these, since we want to buffer upwards. So like I was saying, you'll always need to play with this just a smidge. So it looks like it's raining in New York, which is accurate, I can attest to. Now we want this to be centered. So instead of there being a right anchor here, what I will say here is for the condition label, we want its center X anchor to be equivalent to the center X anchor of the content view. This will get it closer to the center, like so. And I still feel like the height of this cell is a little strange. Maybe we need to bump up the font size here for this to be 62, and maybe we'll do the condition here to be 34, and let's get rid of the black background and the obnoxious red color that we've got going on here. Alrighty, so I think this is looking a little better. I know the centering is a little off still for our icon here. So the best way that I can think of going about, improving this in a timely fashion is by adding a constant of maybe like 15. And this should indeed move it over, which it looks like it did. So I think this is good enough for me. We've got the first cell in pretty good shape. It's looking good. We've got the proper data in from our view model. Let's work on the next cell, which is for our hourly data. So let's jump into our hourly cell, and let's jump into the view model and actually the backing model, and let's see what's actually in here. I'm not familiar. So we've got a date object. We've got cloud cover, condition, we've got a symbol name. So I think what would be helpful would be the hour as well as the condition and a icon. Do we have a temperature? Maybe instead of condition, we can actually show a temperature, and I could swear there's a temperature on here. Yep, there is indeed a temperature on here as well. So let's expose some of this stuff. So we're gonna want a icon name, which will probably be a running theme for all of these view models. So we are going to expose model.symbol name. We're gonna want a temperature, which will be a string, and we'll return the model.temperature.description. We'll also want the actual hour. So we're gonna say hour is going to be a string, and we actually have a date on here. And what we want to do is we want to compute a string from this date object, and we want to get the hour component. So what I'll do in here is create a formatter, a date formatter. So we'll say our formatter here is a date formatter. And the reason it's static, for those that are wondering, is because date formatters are actually very expensive objects. So what we want to actually do is just create one instance of it and use it and hold it statically. So we'll say return formatter, and here we can specify a date style or a time style. So what I actually want to do, if we jump into date formatter, we should be able to specify a custom style, and let's see where I can go about doing that. So we can get a hour out of this particular date. I'll actually leave it like that for the time being. Let's see if this actually cooperates. So here what I'll do is I'll return self.formatter, and we want a string from the model.date. So it's building, which is good. Let's jump into our hourly cell here, and let's see if I can get away with a little bit of cheating and copy these three elements, and we're just going to rename and tweak them a smidge. So here we have a temperature label. We obviously want this to be a whole lot smaller, maybe 18, and we'll want it to be regular. The next thing we want here is a time label, and we want this to be a whole lot smaller as well, and regular is fine. Icon label I think is perfectly fine. Here we'll want to say, once more, we want to add these subviews. I'm going to go in the order of the time label, followed by the icon, followed by the temperature. I think it'll end up looking kind of nice. And finally here, we can actually say icon.image is going to be UI image with the system name of viewModel.icon name. And we can then go say for the temperature label, the text will be our viewModel.temperature. And for the time label, we can say viewModel.hour. And I actually did forget to do two things, so excuse the finally part of that statement. We want to do prepare for reuse. And we definitely want to reset all these elements. So I'm going to say nil this out. We are also going to nil out the time label. And we'll also get rid of this image. And the most important part of this, we want to set up some constraints. So we're going to say func, and we'll call this add constraints. We'll make sure we call this at the bottom of our initializer. And we'll say ns layout constraints activate, and we'll pass in a collection of these constraints. You could alternatively use a stack view in here as well. I think constraints will do the trick. We just want these to be vertically aligned. And in the order as follows, we'll say top label, or time label, I should say, and top anchor. We want a constraint equal to constant view, top anchor. And let's comma separate and copy and paste. We got left, we got right, we got left again, we got right again. And let's see if I can get away with copy and pasting this a total of 2 more times. The next thing we want is the icon. So we'll keep that as well. The top anchor should be the bottom of the time label. And finally, the temperature here. The top anchor should be the bottom of the icon, and we're actually missing one of the most important anchors, and that is for the temp labels bottom anchor. We need to constrain it to all 4 sides of the cell so our cell knows how to compute everything. So let's give this a build and run. I'm a little fast on all this. I'm hoping it's not totally screwed up. It looks like it kind of is, so let's see what on earth is going on. So first and foremost, let me get rid of this obnoxious yellow color. I do see the icon here as well as the temperature. One thing that I don't see is our time, which leads me to believe that our formatter here is not doing its job. So let's actually return model.date.description. And let's see what this looks like. So it looks like we're getting a very long description and something is wrong there. So what I'll actually print here is the description to see how this is being computed. So it looks like this is the date, and it's actually giving me the hour component. So what we actually want is just the hour component out of this date. So let's see how we can do that. So we want to say date components, and we should be able to get this from a particular date. So let's see what we can go about doing. So there's a date components formatter. Let's create some date components. And what we actually only care about is the hour. So let's see if I can hit the H and get the hour out of this. What I actually want to do is get the components from the date in the model. So model.date, and does it let me get the components? Let's see what it lets me do. So it's saying get me a time interval, adding time interval. There's definitely a way to get the particular component out as well. And what I would like to do is try to figure it out. So we have formatter here. We got a formatter style. So let's see what we can do here. We can do abbreviated, omitted, date time, number, percent, time duration. So let's create components here. And you know what? The more efficient way that we can go about doing this is by Googling things. So what we are going to do, we're going to, like I said, always debug everything together. We're going to say Swift get our component from date. Alrighty, and we should have a Stack Overflow answer as we usually do. And let's see how we're gonna go about doing this. Yep, calendar current component hour from the given date. That's what I was thinking of. So what we want is hour is calendar.current component from a particular date. We want the hour from model.date. That is exactly what I was thinking of, and I could not remember the syntax for the life of me, but that's what Google is for. So alrighty, so let's get rid of this print, and what we'll return here is a string with the hour. All right, let's see if this is any better. All right, okay, so we have this starting from the 23rd hour and going on from 0, which is kind of strange. Let's see what other components are available here. We have hour, minute, month, and nanosecond. So I guess hour is fine, but what we need to do is prefix this with :00. It's starting at the 23rd hour, and it should be ordered hopefully correctly. It looks like it is. You can always format this to look a whole lot nicer, but we'll just stick with this, you know, for the sake of brevity and time. So let's go back to our cells here, and let's take a look at this text alignment because something looks a little funky here. So these are all center text aligned. This label was not. Let's make it center as well. All right, so the timing looks good. Let's also center that icon because for some reason it's looking a little sad. So let's see what's going on here. Maybe we can give this a fixed height. So I'll give it a height anchor. We'll do maybe a constraint with a constant of, let's call this 62. And let's see how much space it decides to, oh, okay, it's a little too large. Looks like it filled up a little too much space. Let's try 32. So a lot of these placement related things, you kind of got to play with it and see, you know, what ends up looking good. So let's set a background color to this time label. For some reason, I have a hunch that it's taking up way more space than it should. It in fact is. So from the top anchor, we're gonna say add a padding of 10. And this should not have more than a height of, I would imagine, 44. So let's give this a height anchor with a constant here. We'll do 40 and see what that looks like. All right, looking much better. Things are much more orderly in terms of how much space different components are indeed taking up. And we should be able to go and actually scroll through this as well. The other thing that I think would be really nice to do here is add a background color that is subtle enough that you can see it, but not too obnoxiously bright. So maybe we'll use like a secondary system color, and you can actually see that it looks a whole lot nicer. And the other thing that I might do for the sake of kind of beautifying these views, because you know, what is an app other than making something look really nice? We'll also make the content view have a corner radius, and I'll even go as far as to add a very subtle border. So I'll say border width of 1 and a border color of UI color dot secondary label dot CG color. So all of these are stylistic changes, but I really think they help tremendously in terms of the final product. So looking a whole lot better, and we have one last cell to do. Alrighty, before we do that last cell, let's change a tiny gear and let's add that crown at the top right here. We're gonna be able to click on that and see a paywall to upgrade our user's experience to the pro version. And we'll talk through that in the next video, which will dedicate to setting up Revenue Cat and the paywall. So what I'll do is, this is the weather view controller. So what I'll do is jump back into here, and in the view.load function, I'll say navigation item, right bar button item will be a UI bar button item. And when we create it, we can create it with a system item, or we can create it with just an image and a style. So that's the one I'm gonna opt for. We're gonna use the system icon of crown. Style will be done. Target will be self, and the action will be a selector did tap upgrade, which needs to be a Objective-C annotated selector. And I'll just stub in here a comment of show paywall for once we get to that in the next video. All right, so it looks like that is definitely here. It's looking pretty nice also, if I don't say so myself. Let's get back to that daily collection view cell and finish it up. I think the best way that we can finish this up is it would be great if we had a date as followed by the condition, maybe temperature and icon. So once more, we're going to do a little bit of fancy copy and pasting here. We will actually take all of this jazz and paste it into the daily weather. And I will actually do my best to copy and paste as much stuff from here as possible so we don't have to waste time seeing me type the same thing over and over again. So we'll paste that to the bottom here. Now back in hourly, let's also grab all of these implementations and I will toss it in here. And we actually need our configure function since the type is for the daily cell and not the hourly. So just be mindful of that copy and paste change. And finally, well, not finally, because we do need to adjust actually the what's shown on the UI, but what we can do is we can take what we have in the hourly view model and drop it in here, and we can compile and see, what's going on. So we actually don't even need that date formatter. Well, we actually might need it in the daily cell, but we didn't actually use it in the hourly cell. So I can actually delete it from in there. And back in here, it looks like we don't actually have a temperature on this model. I believe what we have is a low temperature and a high temperature. So what I'll actually do is I am going to return a string that shows the low temperature followed by a hyphen and then the high temperature. Alrighty. For the date, what we actually want to show is a formatted string. So what we'll actually do is instead of showing this, maybe we'll show the day, and let's actually just return this day here and let's see what happens. Usually in weather apps, it doesn't make sense to show the date. You kind of just want to know like, hey, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and what is coming up. It looks like the return expression is an integer, and we want to actually get, a string representation of it. So we're going to say string from day, and here we will implement a function which is string from day, and this day will be an integer returning a string. And what we can do is actually switch on the day. We can say in the case of, I believe it starts at 0, and 0 will be Sunday. And we can go all the way to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we'll default to returning a dash. And then in this case, we can say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Hopefully I spell all these correctly. Thursday, Friday, and finally Saturday. All right, so let's see why this is yelling at me. It looks like it's a literal value. Already handled by previous pattern. Oh, it's because I forgot to change all of these. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alrighty, let's see why this is complaining at this point. It looks like literal value is already handled. Looks like those errors have gone away. Beautiful. Alrighty, so over here we're getting yelled at because there's no hour. Here we have temperature, and here we have day, and here we have all our errors fixed. So let's build and run. We're gonna have some problems obviously, but let's make sure stuff is actually showing up in this purple cell. It looks like it is, which is good. So it looks like a dash is showing up for our for the day label. It looks like the temperature is correct and the icon is correct as well. But we do want to get rid of this purple color, and I'm gonna make this a system. Let's call this a tertiary system background and see what that looks like. Okay, it looks all right. Let's move everything to be oriented slightly differently. We're gonna start with the time label. We want it to be left anchor to the left anchor, which is fine. We want top to be equal to the top. I don't think that's quite right. Let's actually give this a center Y anchor that's equivalent to content view.center Y anchor. Now we gave it a height. Now the right anchor is a little dubious here, so let's get rid of that. Similar for the icon, what we want is the same center Y anchor. We want everything to be horizontally at the same level. Now the next thing that we want is the left anchor to be equal to the time label's right anchor, constant of 10, and we gave it a right or a height here. We can get rid of this right anchor. Once more, we want to adjust this top anchor to be the same. So we'll get rid of this one here. The left anchor here will be to the icon's right anchor with a constant of maybe 20. To the right, we want a constant of -15, and bottom anchor I don't think we actually need. So let's give this a run and let's see what this looks like. So it does look like we kind of have what we're going for. Things are looking pretty all right, but we obviously are not seeing the day. So let's see what gives here and why we're not seeing the day. So what I'm going to print out here is the input day integer that we're passing in, and it looks like, so it is the day of the month. So what I think we actually want is the weekday. So we have week of year, week of month, we have weekday, which is a calendar.component, and it looks like it actually returns a identifier, and from that identifier, which is an integer, we should be able to get it. So today is indeed Monday, so we've got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Not sure why for Sunday we're getting a dash here, but let's take care of that. Let's see what's strange. So it looks like it goes from 1 to 7. It does not look like we are indeed starting at 0. So today is Monday. So let's see what's going on. So I would, if I was a guessing man, which I'd say I am, let's say 7 is Sunday and 1 is Monday. Maybe perhaps later on we can look at the documentation and confirm that. And instead of a dash, let's make this unavailable. This video has gone pretty long, but you know, we are in pretty good shape. We are finally seeing all the cells. Let's adjust the font size here and we can wrap this up. And in the next video, now that we've got this weather app working, what we'll do is we're gonna put the daily weather section behind a paywall. So in other words, once the user upgrades to the Pro plan, they'll be able to see this daily weather component here. So let's actually go and just bump up that font size like I mentioned before we wrap up, and then we will call it a day. So let's bump this font size to maybe 22. You kind of got to play with it a little bit to see exactly what it looks like. I think that's looking a little better. I think we can get away with making this something like bold. Alrighty, so bold looks pretty good. We've got a temperature range over there, which looks correct. Lower number on the left and higher on the right. We've got that nice little looking icon over there, which is also okay. And the padding from the left and right is pretty all right too. So I think we're in pretty good shape. Let me know in the comments if you had any questions. I know we covered a lot of duplicated work between these cells, which is why partly I flew through it. Once more, code is made available on GitHub. Follow the link in the description. Thanks again for sticking around and watching all the way through. Appreciate all you guys' support. I will see you guys in the next part where we'll dig into RevenueCat.